Welcome back to my YouTube channel, WC Coins World. Today, we will take a long and detailed journey into the history of the 1965 one-penny coin, a piece of currency that holds a fascinating place in numismatic history and represents not just money, but also the social, political, and economic changes of its time. This coin is part of the pre-decimal currency system of the United Kingdom, a system that had existed for centuries before the great changeover to decimalization in 1971. The penny had long been one of the most recognized coins in Britain, and by the mid-20th century, it had become not only a medium of exchange, but also a symbol of tradition and continuity in the lives of everyday people. The 1965 one-penny coin was minted during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, and it carries on its obverse side the portrait of the young queen designed by Mary Gillick. This portrait, which had been introduced in 1953, was a highly iconic image of Elizabeth II wearing a laurel wreath that symbolized dignity and continuity of monarchy, and this design was admired for its classical beauty. The 1965 penny, therefore, represents not only a coin but also a reflection of the optimism and post-war rebuilding era of Britain, when the young queen was seen as a figure of stability and hope. The reverse of the 1965 one-penny coin carried the famous seated Britannia design. This imagery of Britannia had been used on the penny since the 17th century, and it symbolized Britain's naval strength and national identity. Britannia is depicted seated with a trident in one hand and a shield bearing the Union Jack in the other, and beside her often appears a lighthouse or a maritime symbol. This long-standing reverse design linked the coin to centuries of tradition and conveyed the sense that even though the nation was modernizing, its currency still carried a thread to its glorious past. The coin itself was made of bronze, a composition that had been used for British pennies since 1860. The bronze alloy was composed of copper, tin, and zinc, giving the penny a distinctive reddish-brown appearance, and by 1965 the penny was relatively large compared to later decimal coins with a diameter of 30.8 millimeters and a weight of around 9.45 grams. This size made it quite substantial in the hand, and it had been a familiar presence in the pockets of generations of Britons since Victorian times. When we speak about the minting of the 1965 penny, it is important to note that these coins were struck at the Royal Mint in London. The Royal Mint had been responsible for the production of British coins for centuries, and in the mid-20th century it still carried out the responsibility of supplying coins for domestic use and for many colonies and Commonwealth countries. The 1965 penny does not bear a mint mark because British coins traditionally did not carry one, unlike many United States coins. Instead, the absence of a mint mark simply reflects its standard production at the Royal Mint. The year 1965 itself is significant in the story of the penny. Britain was in the midst of social and economic transformation during this decade, and although the penny was still a widely used coin, its value was slowly eroding due to inflation. Yet the penny remained a crucial part of everyday transactions and was used widely for small purchases, vending machines, public telephones, and transportation fares. In fact, the familiar phrase "penny for your thoughts" or "spending a penny" in public lavatories had long become embedded in British culture, further showing how deeply the coin was tied to everyday life. The design continuity of the penny is another fascinating point. By 1965, the Britannia reverse had been in use for over 300 years, making it one of the longest running coin designs in the world. This endurance showed how much tradition mattered in British coinage, and the decision not to change it often was intentional. The government and the Royal Mint saw the penny as more than a coin, but as a cultural emblem that reassured people with its stability in a time of change and modern pressures. The obverse portrait by Mary Gillick also deserves closer attention. This portrait was the first official coinage effigy of Queen Elizabeth II, and it captured her in youthful elegance. The wreath she wore was an echo of ancient Roman and Greek imagery, linking the monarchy to timeless classical ideals unlike later portraits which depicted the queen more maturely. This first portrait showed her as young, fresh, and full of promise. The 1965 penny, therefore, preserves that early image of the queen, which for many collectors is one of the most beloved portraits in British coinage. In 1965, the British currency system was still pre-decimal, which meant that £1 was divided into 240 pennies and 12 pennies made a shilling. This complicated system had been in place for centuries, and while it worked for generations of people, it was confusing for outsiders and would eventually be replaced in 1971 by the decimal system. Yet the 1965 penny was part of the very last generation of pre-decimal coins, and today it represents the end of an era for the British currency system that stretched back to medieval times. Collectors today are highly appreciative of the 1965 penny for an array of reasons. Firstly, its substantial size and lush traditional design contribute to the coin's visual appeal, making it a striking piece. Secondly, its historical significance as a pioneer pre-dynamic coin, firmly rooted in Queen Elizabeth II's early reign, intensifies its allure. Lastly, the availability of this coin in a considerable number of pieces ensures that it is neither scarce nor extremely rare. Collectors can still find it to be highly collectible, particularly in uncirculated or proof condition coins, which display brilliant surfaces and crisp details, rendering them exceptional examples of the mid-20th century minting quality. The historical roots of the penny go back far earlier than 1965. Of course, the English penny originated in Anglo-Saxon times and was one of the earliest standardized coins in Britain. Over centuries, the penny evolved through silver versions, medieval hammered issues, and finally into the bronze coin that people knew in the Victorian and 20th century era. By holding a 1965 penny, one could see not just a coin from that year, but also the result of over 1,000 years of currency development. The production numbers of the 1965 penny were very high, as millions were minted to meet the demands of circulation. This ensured that the coin was readily available across the United Kingdom. However, the sheer volume also meant that individual pieces were not particularly rare, though condition can set them apart. Circulated examples are common, but finding coins in mint state condition, especially those carefully preserved from proof sets, adds considerable interest to collectors. Another important point to highlight about the 1965 penny is its role in everyday transactions of the era. Young children would have been familiar with it when buying sweets, toys, or newspapers, and adults relied on pennies for public transport, buses and trains, as well as for various vending machines and amusement arcades. The penny was therefore not just a coin, but a symbol of daily British life, deeply tied to cultural memories and ordinary routines. Even though the penny of 1965 carried no mint mark as noted earlier, it is still important to understand how mint marks function in coinage systems in countries like the United States. Mint marks identify which minting facility produced the coin and can create varieties that become rare or valuable in Britain. However, the Royal Mint was traditionally the sole producer, and mint marks were unnecessary unless coins were struck abroad for colonies and overseas use. Hence, British collectors did not depend on mint marks for identification, but instead looked at years, die, varieties, and condition. The legacy of the 1965 one-penny coin extends far beyond its face value. After decimalization in 1971, the old penny was withdrawn and replaced by the new decimal half-penny, and later the one new penny coin. The massive size and weight of the old penny became impractical in a modern economy, but for collectors, historians, and those with nostalgia for the old system, the 1965 penny continues to serve as a tangible reminder of the nation's transition from tradition to modernization. As we delve deeper into this remarkable history, it's also crucial to bear in mind that 1965 served as a crucial turning point, not only for the coinage industry, along with planning and executing British history, experienced significant changes in that year, with Sir Winston Churchill's death marking a decade of cultural shifts. music, fashion, and new social movements. Amidst this dynamic environment, the penny maintained its enduring role as a symbol of continuity and unity, representing the past and present seamlessly. For those interested in building coin collections, the 1965 penny is often a starting point because it is affordable, readily available, and carries rich historical significance. It provides a way to connect with the pre-decimal system and to appreciate the artistry of classic coinage designs. It is also a way to see the early portrait of Queen Elizabeth II that has since evolved through several different effigies, marking the passage of time across her long reign. The sheer durability of these bronze coins also means that many 1965 pennies survive today even after decades of circulation. The bronze composition ages with a distinct patina that collectors often admire. Some examples retain bright reddish surfaces if they were preserved well, while others show darker tones from years of use in pockets and tills. Each coin, therefore, tells its own story of circulation and history. In summary, the 1965 one-penny coin is not simply a piece of bronze, but a symbol of tradition, continuity, and national identity. It links the reign of Queen Elizabeth II to centuries of British currency development. It carries the imagery of Britannia, which had endured on the penny for generations, and it represents the last years of the pre-decimal system before the sweeping modernization of decimalization. Its design, production, and historical context all combine to make it a coin of lasting fascination and importance. Thank you for watching WC Coins World. Today we have taken a long and detailed journey through the history of the 1965 one-penny coin, exploring its design, its role in the pre-decimal system, and its lasting cultural and historical value. This coin tells us not only about currency, but also about the traditions and changes of Britain during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into numismatic history, and if you did, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to WC Coins World, where we continue to bring you the fascinating stories behind the coins of the world. Your support means a lot and helps us to keep sharing more coin histories with you. Stay tuned for our next video, and until then, keep collecting and keep discovering the stories hidden in coins.